Right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, that is such a good talking voice.
Got my notes.
You got your volume. We're not going anywhere. Come here.
He said you were
Sorry,
ready.
he did. I did ask if we were ready. I'm sorry. We're just...
If you follow our channel, you know we just moved to Alaska from Colorado. I already have a nice video of the drive up the Alcan or Alaska-Canada Highway. That's kind of more the scenery. In preparing to do this drive, we did try to do a lot of research, looking for videos of doing the drive and what to expect, because it is a long road trip on a very remote highway. We thought we would make another video kind of highlighting more of the details and specifics of the drive for anyone looking to make the drive. In total, 3,453 miles from Castle Rock, Colorado to an undisclosed location in the Matsu Valley.
That stands for Matanuska, so sit in the valley, but we decided we're not going to overshare our location for obvious reasons.
So I've got a 2007 Duramax that we had the truck loaded, and then pulling a 25-foot camper that was loaded pretty good too, that we were staying in. In that truck, overall average was 12 miles per gallon. We've got a 2003 Chevy 1500 that didn't have a whole lot of weight in it, and that truck averaged 17 miles to the gallon. Pretty good on that truck, and honestly, I was pulling the camper, I was doing my math beforehand at 10 miles to the gallon in the Duramax, so came out a little ahead.
The total cost was $2,726, pretty much on the dot.
So that $2,700 is every penny we spent from the day we left to the day we got here.
Yes, it does not include preparing prices, like we got an extra spare tire for the camper. It does not include extra leaf springs for the camper. Just from day 1 to day 7, that is what we spent. And we pretty much ate out every meal.
Yep.
Because it was easier and we were just, we were on a roll.
Yeah, we loaded up on a bunch of groceries before we left, planning on cooking every night, but we pretty much drove 14 hours a day most days. If there was any kind of fast food where we ended up stopping, that's what we did. There was a couple nights we ate food that we brought. So to give a little better specifics on the money, over 7 days, we probably spent $50 a day on food. That counts stopping at the gas station, getting a coffee and a soda or something, getting some fast food at the end of the day. So that would make it around $2,300 in fuel to drive 2 trucks from Colorado to Alaska, one of which pulling a camper. So overall, not too bad. I was expecting worst case on gas prices, worst case on mileage.
The only reason we drove 12 to 14 hours a day is we were going under the speed limit the whole time. Google Maps would say, oh, it's only going to be a 10-hour day. Well, that was 12 for us because we were going like 60 to 65 with the camper. And the camper, you have to realize we live in, so it's way loaded down. And then we loaded down the Duramax with stuff we were moving, and we wanted to save as much gas mileage as we could without also taking forever. So that was kind of our sweet spot in speed limits, but we weren't matching Google Maps, so we were not getting anywhere as quick as it said.
It did affect our time more than I expected it to.
A little bit more on the details by day we wanted to do. Day 1, we drove from my parents' house in Castle Rock to Billings, Montana. We would have gone through Denver, Cheyenne, Casper, Buffalo, and Sheridan were the main towns that we would have driven through.
Yep, and then when we hit Denver, just because the way it worked out with my brother getting off work, he rode with us as a spare driver. We ended up hitting Denver at like 9 o'clock in the morning, so it was rush hour. That it probably took 2 hours just to get through Denver. Right after we went through Cheyenne, Wyoming, we hit the craziest hailstorm I've ever been in my life. I mean, it was fine, and then just you hit a wall of white. Couldn't see
Crazy.
the front bumper of your own car.
Once we got to about Casper, Wyoming, even a little ways south of Casper, the smoke started getting really bad. So for our drive, which won't be everybody's drive hopefully, there were a lot of fires in Alberta and the southern end, or I guess it'd be the eastern end of British Columbia. And that affected us from Wyoming until about Dawson Creek, British Columbia.
No, but after Dawson Creek. So the first night we stayed in Billings. I think we got there 9, 10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock, I think. It was pretty late.
So we just found a big truck stop, pulled away in the back next to some big rigs, and went to sleep.
Day 2, we drove from Billings, Montana to Red Deer, Alberta. This was the day we crossed the Canadian border. I will say, while we were in Montana, so we would have gone through Great Falls. Don't get lost in Great Falls, you will not find the highway again. And then we would have hit Sweetgrass, Montana, and then be in Alberta. And then the big town we went through in Alberta was Calgary.
First place we got gas in Canada was in Lethbridge, I think it's called.
Lethbridge.
Absolute disaster of a town to try and figure out how Canadian gas pumps work. So when you look at the sign, they have it in cents. So it's like $1.79 a liter.
So it's 179 cents per liter is the way they post it. So you pull up and you're used to dollars per gallon. You're like, I was told Canadian gas would be expensive, but dang.
Then the Canadian dollar to American dollar, it's like 75 American cents.
We had no idea what we were spending on gas in Canada, or
Yes.
how much, because then it would ask you how much you wanted to pre-authorize for in liters.
Put the card in the pump and went from there.
Yeah, we did use a debit card 90% of the time in Canada, and it was just a 1% exchange rate for us. The drive-wise, though, views at this point, day 2, it was pretty much all farms.
Canadian border. Did a lot of research on what we could bring, what we couldn't bring, trying to figure out what to expect. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't want to be searched. We wanted it to be a seamless process. But I was pretty confident if we did get searched that we weren't doing anything wrong. It did bring 5,000 rounds of ammunition, and I brought, or maybe it's 3,000.
It's 5,000.
5,000?
We left with like 5,000 rounds,
Okay.
and you said we were on the dot. So if it wasn't, we were in the wrong.
They want rabies stuff for the dogs, at least online it says that. So we were bringing 2 dogs and a cat. Had that all ready to go. Becca had the cat with her.
They did not ask for any vaccination records. Yeah. I'm not saying don't get them if you're going, but they could have cared less about any paperwork besides a driver's license and a passport.
I pulled up to the gate first, with Becca behind me, asked for our passport, what our reason for being in Canada was, how long we were planning to stay, if we had any firearms, any cannabis, tobacco, alcohol, any weapons of any kind. We were super straightforward and direct in answering their questions, not offering any other information. Just yes, no answers.
Yeah, we didn't want to give, like, I'll over talk. So I had pretty strict instructions that yes, no.
Throughout the whole process, they asked probably close to 10 times how long I was planning on being in Canada. And
they never asked me that.
So I felt like they were trying to double check my story and make sure things weren't changing.
Hi. She asked, do you have any, like, non-firearm weapons, like tasers? I can't remember what else was on that list, but tasers and stuff like that. I didn't know those weren't allowed in Canada, but they're not. More than $10,000 US dollars in cash with you. I was asked if I was bringing anything into Canada that I wasn't planning on taking with me out of Canada. Like if I was going to sell anything on my way through. I said no.
Told them we were moving to Alaska, and she said, alright, I need you to pull up to Bay 4 of the barn, which my parents had already crossed the day before, so I knew that meant we were getting searched. Pulled up there, super friendly. At that point in time, I did tell them about the ammunition, which was no problem. They asked where it was. The big thing that they reiterated was they didn't want to be surprised by anything they found. They kind of kept me away from the truck and asked me all the questions. But I did go through what was going to be where. And when I packed the truck, I kept all of the ammunition, all of the stuff that I thought would be of interest to them towards the back of the truck where you drop the tailgate. It's right there, easy to see. So pulled the dogs out of the truck. The border agents were just talking about how cute the dogs were, and they were not rude in any way, shape, or form. They opened the box with the ammo in it, saw the ammo, closed it. Probably took 20 minutes. They went through the truck, glove box, center console. They were in the camper for a while, which doesn't surprise me because it was full of shit.
Well, we live in it, so then you went through. You guys, pretty easy.
Said everything was good. Told us we could leave, and right as we're pulling out of the barn, Becca's pulling into the barn.
She had me pull up to the main building and go to the traffic counter. Went inside, and it was just this kind of nice, almost looked like a DMV building. They took my car keys. So I sat in there for probably the 30 minutes they were getting searched. And the guy grabbed me and gave me my stuff and said, if you can pull into Bay C, we'll take it from there. So I did. And my guy was super nice. I mean, he was probably twice my size, but I think he tried really hard to not intimidate me. He was so nice. But he did ask, like, my whole life story before they searched the truck. They asked if the truck's ever been in someone else's possession for a long period of time or recently, when we bought it, what am I doing in Alaska, have I homesteaded in Colorado before. It was he was nice, but I kind of think he was trying to trip me up a little bit. The other big question he asked was, have there ever been guns in this truck? Because I have some device that will test for gunpowder residue, like up to 3 months old. And I was like, oh yeah, there's been guns in this truck.
We're American.
We're Americans.
It all went well. I don't know if moving to Alaska is some kind of red flag or something.
Something red flag does.
Yeah. My parents went through the day before. They got searched. Both of us got searched. And when you're sitting there getting searched, you can look out the window of the waiting room at the border gate, and it was camper after camper,
just headed
trucks,
in.
trailers, just getting waved right on through the border. Nobody getting searched. We made it through the border.
Made it to Red Deer. Stayed at a pretty nice truck stop in Red Deer. Day 3, we are looking at Red Deer to Dawson Creek, which is the start of British Columbia. We drove through Edmonton and then an area called Slave Lake, but not very many other towns that I remember.
Yep, so that was our day of detours for the fires. It added 2 hours to the day on our detours. Don't think it added all that much as far as mileage, but there was a lot of fires. We drove through some fires where there was still stumps and logs burning in the ditches, linemen placing telephone poles.
A lot of hot spots. I couldn't get those on. I got some maybe on my phone of those, but we were going fast enough. You just see like a stump on fire in the burnt out woods. Did see one house that was saved. Didn't see any burnt structures.
Well, there's not a lot of structures out there.
But still,
not a lot of people. But
pretty rough through the fires.
It was a bad day. We got to Dawson Creek. That's where we caught up to my parents. They had left like a week before us. Went and visited some family in South Dakota on their way. Got a hotel there because that was kind of going to be our last day with much civilization.
But yeah, Dawson Creek is the start of the Alaska-Canada Highway. So after we stayed in that hotel, the next day we headed to Mooncho Lake.
Mooncho or Moonco, don't know what you call it, but
we're still arguing how to say it. We should just look it up. We would have driven through Fort St. John, Fort Nelson, and then in no man's land. There was nothing on this drive.
Very little cell reception, so they had some power outages, internet out. We had to pay for fuel with Canadian cash along this stretch of the drive. If there was fuel, we got fuel because we didn't know with the fires if somewhere was going to be closed.
This was a really gorgeous part of the drive. The smoke cleared. This is where the scenery really began for me, was British Columbia.
Yeah, you kind of get into the Canadian Rockies. The highway, the pavement was in good condition, but a lot of steep hills, a lot of up and down.
Yeah.
So pretty much the whole day. Lots of wildlife, bighorn sheep. I think we saw 12 black bears that day.
Yes,
just on the side of the road. Good rain that day. Breath of fresh air after all the smoke. but it did dampen a little bit of the views. Munco or Muncho Lake,
Beautiful.
absolutely gorgeous.
Just beautiful. You drive right next to the lake, and it's just
color,
a mountain here.
Blue, turquoise looking water. So we stayed at a campground there.
Day 5, we went from the lake to, we were supposed to go to Whitehorse, but we ended up pushing to Haines Junction. And the other town we would have driven through was Watson Lake, which is where the signpost forest is. But that was another very gorgeous day. We were going to stop in Whitehorse originally. We'll talk more about that. Ended up pushing to Haines Junction. This is where we entered the Yukon.
Then it's just pine forest for a long ways. We intended to stay in Whitehorse, was kind of the plan, because it's really the only big town up there. Felt a little sketchy to us. For my parents, they just had a trailer and a lot of the stuff exposed in the bed of the truck, tools, gun safe, a bunch of stuff. All of the hotels were very downtown with lots of people walking around, and didn't feel comfortable leaving all the stuff out overnight. So we decided just to push on to Haines Junction.
Bob had recently been robbed of some tools in Colorado Springs, so he wasn't
taking any
He wasn't
chances.
having it with us, wanting to stay.
Made it to Haines Junction. Not a whole lot there. Real small town just on the junction of 2 highways. I think it was 8:30 or so by the time we got there. Fast gas.
Like fast without the T.
Gas station and RV park. Nothing fancy. It was run by a guy from Switzerland,
because the views in Haines Junction are outrageous. Just mountains right there. And he said he had to have his mountains, but he left Switzerland.
Turned out to be a super cool guy.
Yeah.
They were kind of full in the RV park or campground or whatever. Now just pull over here in my yard and give me $20.
Yeah.
You know.
Just find a spot.
Send a tent up over there. He really didn't care. Real laid back.
Very nice guy.
Ended up talking to him for a little bit just about moving to Alaska, and he was giving us advice on gardening and greenhouses, and
He was
just
cool.
a cool laid back dude.
So day 6, we left Haines Junction. We wanted to hit Glen Allen. We didn't quite make it there. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we landed at Grizzly Lake Campground, which is kind of near Gakona, Alaska. So we crossed the U.S. border and went through Beaver Creek, was the last town in the Yukon, and then Tok, Alaska was the big Alaskan town we would have gone through at that point.
And it's not a big town.
No.
We were going to drive an hour out of Haines Junction in the morning, and then the road was going to get rough. He was basically like, your trailer's going to break. Your dad's trailer's going to break.
And he was correct.
Yeah. So we left in the morning. We drove for like an hour and a half, 100 miles or something. I would say 99% of it up to Haines Junction was in great shape. You might come across a bad pothole here and there. There was a couple small stretches of gravel. Basically, if you see the sign saying it's going to gravel, slow down. The gravel's usually smooth, the pavement's smooth, but that transition from pavement to gravel can be rough. And me and my dad were talking like, that guy's crazy. This road's fine. It wasn't another 10 miles after that, and it just fell apart.
Frost heaves, potholes,
Yep.
gravel to dirt, dirt to gravel.
200 miles starting at roughly Destruction Bay. It was like 15 to 25 miles an hour for 200 miles. Terrible. Way worse. I've seen, on the Hall Road in Alaska and up around north of Fairbanks, they can get really bad frost heaves, and it was nothing compared to this stretch of the Alcan. Not knowing how rough the road was going to be, I bought spare leaf springs for the camper, because it's kind of a thing with the camper that they're kind of weak leaf springs. We were getting close to the U.S. border, and I don't know why I felt like we were getting out of the bad road, because it continued for another 100 miles. A gravel stretch, and we were only going 15, 20 miles an hour. And it went back to pavement. As soon as the trailer hit that, me and my brother heard a loud pop, and then Becca was immediately on the radio going leaf spring, camper's leaning. So, did snap a leaf spring. Luckily I had plenty of spares. There was a good spot right there to pull over. We were going for land speed records on changing leaf springs. One of the leaf spring bolt nut was rusted onto the bolt, and it chewed up the threads, removing it, and I did not bring spare bolts. We're trying to find chainsaw files, grinders, anything we can to try and clean up the threads, because we are in the middle of nowhere. It is a long ways to anything. cussing the day because we were doing so good on time.
That turned out to be our worst day.
My dad had a truck he was towing on the trailer, had the same shock mounts, same bolts. So we went over, stole the bolt off the shock mount with the truck on the trailer, threw it in there, had us going. I think in total, it was about an hour we were down.
And then we went 10 miles and your dad's truck broke down.
We were having trouble with his injector wiring harness, sends the truck into limp mode. So we kind of knew what it was. He had replaced the wiring harness when he left Colorado at a Chevy dealer. It made it all the way to like the Alaska border.
And it kept coming up for these next 2 days.
So that was maybe half an hour after we fixed the leaf spring. His truck died. So we cleared the check engine light, unplugged it, plugged it back in, went another 10 miles. Did it again. Unplugged it, cleared the light, plugged it back in. Then we made it quite a ways after that. Crossed the border, back into the U.S., piece of cake.
So easy.
And we handed them the passports. I don't know if they even looked at them.
Yeah.
And just let us right on through. The road still did not improve.
Just got worse, I think.
Yeah,
I
we
think
drove
it got
past
worse.
the campground that had...
It was completely flooded.
Yeah.
I guess they've had a lot of flooding up there in that northeast section of Alaska. And then they were working on it, so it was just construction stop after construction stop.
Really slow going. Really rough road. Rough in a different way. My mind is traditional frost heaves where just the road's really wavy, but it's pretty smooth pavement. It's not hard impacts of hitting potholes.
Mm-hmm.
It was just real wavy and windy. Whereas on the Canada side, it was potholes and gravel and sharp edges of pavement. We made it to Tok, Alaska. Stopped for dinner there. We were heading towards Glen Allen, just as far as we got, find a place to sleep. And Dad's truck started having big time troubles. It wasn't even making it a mile at a time before he'd have trouble with that injector wire harness again. This has happened before to this truck over the 20 years he's had it. You can take something really sharp and poke it through the electrical connections and it'll re-crimp the wires. Didn't think we really needed to do that because it was a brand new wiring harness, but after the 4th or 5th time in 5 miles that it had set off the engine light, we decided to do that, and then after that the truck was smooth sailing.
We found Grizzly Lake Campground and absolutely loved it. It was very cozy, very laid back, very give me $30 and find a spot to park. Just kind of like a homestead that doubles as a campground. Cool people. We go into day 7. We went from that Grizzly Lake Campground, basically Gakona, Alaska, all the way to our home in the Mat-Su Valley. Absolutely the most gorgeous drive I've ever been on in my life. We've been up there before, and between Glen Allen and, say, Palmer is endless mountains right next to you, just across a big river. It's a glacial river, so it's really pretty.
To sum it up, the road was not some death-defying road to hell or whatever that everybody makes it out to sound like. We brought spare leaf springs, spare tires for our spare tires. Didn't need any of that. You know,
Well, we did need the leaf springs.
We did need the leaf spring.
We didn't need any spare tires. We didn't need any extra fuel that we carried.
Yep.
We're not saying don't bring those things. We're just saying when you see online and people are like, this is the worst road I've ever driven, it wasn't that bad.
You got to kind of be over-prepared.
Yes.
Not that you're going to need any of those things, but if something does happen, you're 1,000 miles from any decent-sized town that could have what you need. You've got no cell phone signal. If you're driving one car by yourself, you could very well be screwed. I mean,
Yes.
we were driving 3 trucks, and we had a flatbed trailer with a truck on it, so if something happened, we could take that truck off the trailer, put the broken one on there. In general, it wasn't that bad of a road. Very scenic.
Very fun vacation to go on. Just know that our $2,700, we were running very cheap.
Depending on what you're looking to get out of the drive, if you're watching this because you're looking
Moving.
at driving the Alcan, whether on vacation or to move. We did it for $2,700 driving 2 trucks. We ate out, fast food, but we ate cheap.
We slept at truck stops.
Slept at truck stops, which
Is weird.
can be a little awkward or uncomfortable, but just go for it. That's all them truckers are doing is sleeping out there.
Just stay out of their way.
Just, if you were to stay in some guest cabin type place every night, or campgrounds or hotels, it could bump that price way up.
I'd say, like the road, being over prepared but not over worrying. The Canadian border, be prepared but don't worry. We were searched. They tore through everything we owned, put it all back together. They didn't even ask for the pet vaccinations, but we had them. Like, you don't want to get caught up there without something you need or with something you're not supposed to have. We'll wrap up the video there, just talking about the drive on the way up. We made it to Alaska, made it to the cabins. They are Levi's parents' cabins. We will be staying in their guest cabin this winter, sharing all of our adventures up here while we work on finding land, building our homestead. We'll be salmon fishing, moose hunting. I'm pregnant. We'll be raising babies.
Yeah. Gardening, preserving food, hunting, fishing, maybe some gold mining, trapping.
Trapping for sure.
Snow machines.
All the good stuff. If you're interested in kind of a remote Alaska lifestyle, this is the channel for you. Make sure to subscribe. That was a marketing move. Did you hear that? Make sure to subscribe, like, comment. All that good stuff helps our videos out so we can make this the channel we want it to be. And stay tuned for all the adventures. They're slowly unraveling around us, and we're going to take everyone along with it. Is that it? Are we good?
Yep. To sum it up, more adventures to come.
More adventures.
And cut. Bye-bye.